Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with great recent recordings of the classics. And today we are talking about Brahms Symphony cycles, because I just did I think, an interesting chat, which I hope you'll take a look at, that basically asks the question, is the authentic tradition of Brahms playing dead or just dying? And my conclusion was that it isn't dead. I mean, it can't be dead because we're still playing the music, right? And we have all these recordings by people who were affiliated with Brahms or that first generation of Brahms interpreters, and they all knew what they were doing, and it's not a mystery. So there will always be people out there who either learn their lessons wisely and know how to conduct a good Brahms symphony, or who discover for themselves, because of their innate affinity with the music and study and musicianship and professionalism and inspiration, how Brahms ought to go. So I'm not worried about that. But what we will find and what we are seeing is just a lot more dreck. The tradition of Brahms playing, the authentic tradition, the great tradition of Brahms playing, back the day when you could go see a Brahms symphony and just about anybody could do it, it would be good. Maybe not stunning, but good. That tradition has become diluted, diffused by the piles of nonsense being spouted by the historically informed performance people and by the need to do something different for its own sake, the cocaine hippo syndrome that we've discussed, the idea that you do things because you can, not because you should. And also, in Brahms's case, the ease with which, it's so easy to do Brahms cycles because he only wrote 4 symphonies of moderate length, and you could fit them all on 2 CDs. I mean, if in streaming, it's all irrelevant. They're just out there in digiblivion, hanging out, waiting for you to suck them down into your listening apparatus. And so it's easy to do these 4 things in a clump. And the recording industry, particularly these days, is operating in clumps, and conductors operate in clumps because, they come up with a project and then they run around to all their little orchestras and do their clump of the week. I'm 2 weeks in this place, 2 weeks in that place, 3 or 4 concerts. A wonderful way to just program all 4 Brahms symphonies and get them out of the way, and people like them and they'll all show up. And why am I doing this with my hands? I don't know. You get the picture. And so really terrific Brahms cycles of a more recent provenance are hard to find. And the third thing that makes them difficult, and really the dumbest of all, is that record labels don't keep them in print long enough anymore. The catalog is so crazy that the really good stuff, it appears, it disappears, poof. So you're left with whatever garbage happens to be, the flavor of the month, whatever happens to come out, whether it's good or bad or indifferent. And where you find all the great stuff is in the reissue boxes, of great conductors, all of whom at one point or another confronted Brahms. So this is one area where I think selection is a little trickier than it is for most things. Most repertoire, I have no problem finding fabulous post-2000 performances. It really isn't hard. There are a lot of them, just many, 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 by wonderful artists, and we will be talking about them. And this is just such a wonderful opportunity, as I've said before, to cover, the basic repertoire using a different criteria than we usually do, because I know a lot of you want to hear more recent performances, and that's natural and normal, and it's fine with me. So we're going to start with Brahms symphony cycles, and maybe we'll go back and grab some individual symphony performances of extraordinary distinction. But for the moment, I want to do a cycle, and I want to do a cycle that a lot of people don't talk about, but it is first class. It is this one, David Zinman with the Tonhalle Orchestra of Zurich on RCA. And it's really quite wonderful. Now, Zinman's Tonhalle legacy was documented. I have it sitting right over there in this enormous box, The Great Symphonies. And it started with his Beethoven cycle, which was extremely period instrument infused. And, sometimes that was good, and sometimes that was just annoying as hell. But generally speaking, he did some wonderful things in romantic repertoire where he could apply some of the more useful strictures of the period instrument movement. That is, tighter rhythm, sharper, timpani and brass interjections, maybe a little bit more forward balance of the woodwinds. Of course, Klemperer did that too, but there's nothing new under the sun, right? And he was, Zinman is a conductor of a generalist conductor and traditional style. That is, he was trained and educated to do the basic romantic repertoire, which he has done with great distinction throughout his career. Particularly things like his Rachmaninoff 2 on Tellark, which is amazing, and Elgar's Enigma variations, his Rimsky-Korsakov stuff that he did when he was in Rotterdam. He's made a lot of really fine recordings, and he made a lot of fine recordings in this Arte Nova series. His Schumann symphonies were just fabulous. My goodness, they're great. We can talk about those too, perhaps, in another video in this amazing series. Yes, but for now we're talking about Brahms. And he's a real Brahmsian. He gets Brahms. And, his personal style tends to be a little bit, let's say, post-romantic. A little bit. He's better at sort of classicizing things. Well, that's Brahms, right? At least that's one aspect of Brahms. And he performs all 4 symphonies with great consistency and style. The first is very, very powerful and exciting. He doesn't screw up the third. The finale is really, really, really effective. Same thing with the Passacaglia in the fourth. The end of the second symphony could be have a little bit more pizzazz at the very end. He lets the brass hold back a little bit. But, I talk about this in my actual written review at classicstoday.com, which you can go check out if you like. But still, on the whole, this is as distinguished and excellent a Brahms cycle as we've heard recently, certainly. And it was recorded in, let's see what the date here is, 2011. That's when it was released. So 2011, it's recent, and it's wonderful. And it doesn't get a lot of attention. I don't know why. I haven't even given it a lot of attention. And it lives right behind me here. So every time I come and do a video, I see this spine here, Brahms Symphonies, Zinman, and I say to myself, I really ought to talk about this again, other than doing the original review, because it's really, really, really good. And it'd be nice to talk about a recent Brahms cycle that's superb. And so I thank you for giving me the opportunity to do just that. Check it out for yourself. I think you'll be very happy. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.